And welcome back to WAAAGH Tactics. We're here to talk about the Taktiks Brigade. Is it the only way to war? Let's get stuck in, lads. So today we're going to be talking about how the Taktiks Brigade has been taking over the meta and is actually showing out on all the stats and the facts. So let's start with that, like always. So Orks with the 53% win rate, quite active on quite active Taktiks Brigade detachment. But if you actually look at the Orks overall, when it comes for the actual player base for Warhorde, for example, it looks like there's about four players for Warhorde, or one player for Warhorde, as this was the Super Bowl weekend, less events, and we'll be covering a good amount of international events this weekend. And so they have an 80% win rate because the one player that played Warhorde ended up going 4-1. Fantastic to you, might get. Then we have Green Tide with 63%, but the majority of the player base is sitting here at Taktiks Brigade with the 14 players playing Brigade, with 5 of them going X and 1, none of them winning the event. So Orks just overall doing well. Pretty interesting that the vast majority of the Ork player base has moved over to the Taktiks Brigade. Now, there's a bunch of reasons we can extrapolate on that as we continue to go over the list that we're going to look at this past weekend. And of course, it's a live conversation, so feel free to ask me any questions. I'll obviously get into that and any comments or concerns. So, with that being said, let's of course not forget the shout out to today's sponsor, the Baron of Dice. The Baron of Dice allows us to do the paint competition that we do and have provided us with the WAAAGH Tactics dice. So check them out in the description, 5% off because nobody likes taxes. And shout out to our paint competition winners because you get do a great job, as you can see on screen. And then, of course, I'd like to talk about the gets that we aren't going to go into depth about their path to victory, but I still want to give a shout out as successful WAAAGHs. So we have Kim Bonnier, I messed up your name, sorry. Gran Torino 40K, where he ran a Warhorde list featuring 6 trucks, 3 breakers, and then 2x10 knob units with 3 Warbosses. Quite wild, very elite. And then we actually have Stefan Love at WECCON Vinter, and he had 3 shock attack guns, a mech with the Gob Boomer. Then he had 3 breakers and 3 busters, right? So he's going full new data sheet and full new detachment. The interesting thing about both of these very successful gets is that they both actually ended up taking loss to custodians, right? It's one of those things where you're playing a hard skew of damage and killing and elite, and then you run into someone else that's trying to do that but does that only. So it becomes like a hard matchup, but we can get into that as we talk about custodes as a whole. So yeah, with that being said, let's look at the order dice, because everybody's been using the WAAAGH Tactics Brigade, so check out our dice orders in our description. Now, let's start off with the first get. We have our James Ball Warboss. So James Ball is running a Taktiks Brigade, the first of the 3 lists that we are going to cover this week from last weekend. So James Ball got 16th place, ended up going 6 rounds, 6 rounds, going 5-1. And this was the Beachhead Brawl, and there was actually 202 players in the UK. This was a ITC UKTC event. All right, so makes sense. The America was quite busy with the Super Bowl. So the best performing Ork player was Jake Harding, which we will talk about after my get James here. But let's talk about James Ball and his path to victory, because he did only drop 1 big game round. Surprisingly, so did Jake Harding the same exact round. So let's look at James Ball's list in depth. And shout out to you guys. Love to see Toyota Athlon. What's up? War to the chat. So we have the beloved Big Mech and Mega Armor as the Warlord Mech Captain. Best enhancement in the detachment for sure. Then we have 3 by shock attack guns. Now, everybody knows this is what the game is right now. This is what's hot on the meta, hot on the menu, bringing all the firepower. Now, the interesting fun part, 2 solo mechs. You get a lot of questions about these mechs. Do I need them? Why would I need them? Can I just bring more stuff to kind of just stand around? We talk about that in a video on unit how to use these guys. But in short, in this detachment, what we're looking at here is he brought Mork's Cunning, which how it's worded and how rules typically are judged upon is that none of the abilities, no data sheet abilities, no enhancements, nothing work when you're inside of a transport. Therefore, if you were going to stick this on a shock attack gun and he's inside of a truck, for example, then you wouldn't be able to Mork's Cunning redeploy. So having a solo mech on the field allows you to deal with the fact that you're inside of a transport. I've heard people are judging it the other way. Whatever, just ask your TO. I'm just telling you what is vastly understood. So like the War Boss ability, us not having the War Boss's data sheet ability, that's why, because the truck. It's not because anything else. Is the truck makes you not have it. So that's why he brought Mork's Cunning. Interestingly enough, he does have a battle wagon. It's not open top. He does have a battle wagon though. Now he has a second mech. The second mech is Gob Boomer. So that's so he can throw an order up the field. Now, this always gets contention with me and all the other gets in the community, right? So you tell me what you guys think. Do you run a solo mech at all? How are you using him? I actually have run God Boomer quite often. And for the Mork's Cunning, sometimes you can just put him in a war boss or something, and then he can yell. He can't go be redeployed back into the transport, right? He can be pulled off the field, but he can't put back in the transport. But I'm just expecting to throw in the transport and then move the truck, right? So some people play that way. But for the God Boomer, I like him for units like we'll discuss as we continue this list. Now, we have a War Boss, and then we have Zodgrod Wortsnagga, another unit that we get a lot of conversation about. So then he has a big 10-man unit of Storm Boys. Yes, the big man unit of Storm Boys has finally showed up and showed out. You know, this unit gets told that it sucks because boys, their Storm Boys are quite effective. If you're just telling me I'm throwing a 10-man unit of boys at you in a truck, right? I mean, with jetpacks, right? The thing is, when you have God Boomer, you can throw orders at this unit and it can advance and charge all game. So you pair that with, maybe Zodgrod for some straight pressure and speed of the table when it's your WAAAGH turn. If you're going to really sit on that 5-up invul and not just be a paper bag like the 10-man unit typically is, you could go in with the Zod and the Storm Boys and then the rest of your WAAAGH units, and you got some speed to kind of not be in with the way of each other. But in most cases, you can actually use this 10-man unit for a late game charging or just an early game, just skirmish running around. You give him +1 strength, you give him reroll charges, he advances in charges. You give him, either one, really, those two. So those are the two most often you bring. I absolutely do enjoy this unit. Now, very, very, very squishy. I've also lost 8 dudes to Overwatch outside of the wall, really trying to put some pressure on people. So be aware of that. It is still soft, but gosh, the advance in charge from Orks all game with jetpacks. That's what when you run it, this unit, you're like, all right, I get why they don't give it to us all game, with more units. So it's just kind of funny like that. 2 5-man units of Storm Boys, and then 3 trucks with 1 battle wagon. That's what typically people do when they don't have a bunch of battle wagon trucks, for example. And some people really just like battle wagons. I know on UKTC terrain, there's good places to hide them. Very prevalent in like America as well. As for the ITC, UKTC, I have the terrain on my table. Sometimes I feel the wagon doesn't hide too well there. So you guys can tell me how you feel about that. We do have Zap Cannon on it. If you have the mech, giving it 1 shot saves you time of rolling other garbage shots for D6. So just get 1 good high value shot, anti-monster 4+ vehicle 4+, get some 4 damage on some, or is it 5? I forgot. Then we have the 10 flash hits, of course, for the mega mech. And then this was the fun part. He has 3 units of Gretchen, and he does have Zod, but he absolutely does not have a 20-man unit with Zod. I have not seen that since Index Hammer. I'm pretty sure. I haven't seen someone actually take it to an event, especially 6th round, and take Zod with just a unit, a 1 10-man unit of 11-man unit of Grats. Now, you can totally put this in a truck, scout it up the field, because the truck can take advantage and adopt the scouting ability from Zod. That's because the dedicated transport will adopt scout. Your battle wagon will not, your truck will. Therefore, there's a really good chance that this git was crazy and this git was cunning and he just put them in a truck and then had, the Zod move up the field safely in a truck, and then he can run up and disembark and go speed up the table up the field. Or he kept it as a small unit because it's way easier to hide on profile and scout up into enemy terrain and still have a very effective unit. The fact that you have the mechs to yell orders at these guys is cool. The fact that you can redeploy Zod is pretty handy as well, and the wagon is for sure. Then we go to the rest of the list. A 5-man unit of Ludas. I typically expect that just for scoring, but people might throw orders at it. Up to you. A 5-man unit of Knobs, typically for a SWAT team to fill that kind of slot. And it's really the only unit that's going to be with the War Boss on this list. So a little bit of punch. I like that he at least has something that's respectable on the wall. Other than that, everything's really just DACA because we follow up with 3 units of Tank Busters. Now, if you're really about that life, you can put all 3 units of Tank Busters with their shock attack guns in the battle wagon and then redeploy this giant brick, like Mark Perry likes to call the DACA capsule, right? So James Ball has all those options on this list. Let's take a look at his path to victory as to what this Git ran into. Doing quite well in 6 rounds, baby. Let's go. 6 rounds. I kind of like that. 6 rounds instead of 5. But that's a long weekend too. I get it. So let's move on. But for these big events, definitely 6 for like hundreds of people. So let's move into his first matchup, the Leagues of Voltan. So we have 2 Iron Here champions and then Uthlar. So that's cool. They have the actual epic character. 1 unit of Hearthkin Warriors. They can break apart, put all their special weapons into 1 5-man unit. 4 Sagittars, highly effective units for their point cost. T10, it's really awkward. Good anti-tank firepower. 2 units of Berserkers. The only thing to remember here about these guys that Orc players tend to forget is that they have something called mole launchers, and mole launchers are stupid if they actually end up hitting you. Now, they are indirect. These dudes, I think, typically hit on maybe even 5, so it might be hitting you on 6s. But it typically just needs to hit you, and then on a 4+, -2 to your movement in advance. Don't let it make you scared of anything. Just know it can happen and have contingencies. Then we have 2 units of 5 Hearthguard, excuse me, and then 2 units of the Hecaton Land Fortresses, followed by 2 units of Pioneers and 1 Jaeger unit. Jaeger, the cool thing about them is they're like reactive moving. And they're a little bit tough. Like, how we like commandos because we're T5, kind of sets people off. We're kind of cool. They're T5 because they're dwarven and they reactive move. That's the coolest thing about them. Pioneers come off the table edges, and then Hecaton Land Fortresses with these Terminators are the whole point of the army. So when you play against League of Voltan, just think of them as they want to scout forward with these Sagittars, disembark little garbage like 5-man units of the battle line, or these Berserkers if they have to play and delay you early game for the first turn, maybe 2, and then these take position with the fortresses and the Terminators, and the Terminators want to kind of overwhelm a flank and shoot and charge to get the full value out of them. So as long as you can kind of have overlapping layers on how to assault them, which our Git does, because he has tank busters that he can just pop. Really, if you kill those Terminators, and we get this question a lot sometimes, not a lot, but some once in a while, where people are like, can I shoot my tank busters and Terminators, or do I shoot them into the Sagittar, and in what cases should I pop pulse rifles? Well, in this case, they're T6, so the pulse doesn't really assist you, but it will assist you if they decide to pop Armor of Contempt, and just being able to pick up those guys when they're behind all of those screens of what they consider trash, like fortresses and Berserkers. You pick up their efficient units. You can either choose to pop the fortress or take out one of those 5-man units, feel like you can't get to it, and that they're a big threat to you. So I like that it has layers. And then he has the punching. He has the Zod for the speed to wrap and trap anything, and then Storm Boys to run up and start punching, flipping. Because that's the thing about a 10-man unit of Storm Boys, if it ever survives, or if it goes into something like these armies that have a bunch of like transport armor, a 10-man unit of Storm Boys doesn't really have to kill him. He just has to jump on an objective and tag like 2 of those trucks, or maybe just 1 even. It could be good enough, and then flip primary or stop units from disembarking, because it won't kill the vehicle itself, but you can wrap it and then they can't really disembark. A unit cannot fall back and disembark either. So if he chooses to fall back, he could end up just doing nothing with that unit. So a lot of options here. I like his list. That's what I like about James' list. You can tell that he's going for the DACA, but with the DACA, he brought a lot of speed, like some speed, some mobility, I guess is maybe a better way to put it. So great job there. 98-point win on his first game. Pulled the right one, guys. Boop, boop. Yeah, 3 busting, 3 battle wagons, 3 tank busters and a battle wagon is super nice. Let's go into his second game, where he also did well, which was into the Gene Stealer Cultist, something that people don't got, a lot of options with. I don't have a lot of options with that. So we have Death Leaper, Abominant, oh my gosh, Benefice, whatever his name is, Clemavis, Locust, and then the Patriarch. Interesting thing here is Patriarch is essentially like a Brood Lord for Tyranids, where he wants to put dev wounds into you and scout up and put a bunch of pressure on you. Abominant leads a big brick of I want to kill you units and hit you hard, and he gets back up when they have feel no pains. And then a Death Leaper, basic little lictor kind of on his own. We have 5-man unit of hybrids, 3 units of gargoyles. Now they do have the same ability that they had when Tyranids, because the detachment here allows them to combine, I believe, because it's called Final Day. That's pretty sick. Where the gargoyles are like a great move blocking, delaying garbage unit that is going to be really annoying to, like, if you were a warhorde army and they just take these guys, run up into you, they shoot at something random, don't got to kill it, one guy has to shoot and then they can all move. Good for move blocking, good OT because they're battle line. But the fact that you have a 10-man unit of gargoyles to fly over them is fantastic. 1 big 20-man unit of hybrids. The aberrants we were speaking about before, they have feel no pains, they're quite durable, but they're slow and they want to hit you hard. 10-man unit of hybrid metamorphs, 5-man unit, 2 lictors, pure strain unit. Like I said, they want to scout forward, charge into you, take the initiative, and then do a bunch of dev wounds into you. And then 3 individual Achilles Ridge Runners with Goliath truck, and a Goliath rock grinder. So 98-point win there. It's just one of those things where Orks kind of just can overwhelm these guys. Do not let GSC concede, like, do not concede the table to GSC and be scared of them. Tyranids as well. It's not that you shouldn't be scared of them. It's that you can't concede the table because they want to do what we do, where they want to trade bodies for points. They're willing to just stand on objectives and die as long as they can kind of control the board space and really reduce your ability to score. That's what you want to do as an Ork player. So take that from them because we hit harder than them. We're tougher than Gits. So get stuck in and beat the crap out of them or shoot them off the table like our Git here with the tank busters. Now we go into game 3 where he took his 1 loss. But we're going to talk about the army he lost to, some of the data sheets that are important, maybe so you can be on the lookout for it as an Ork player yourself. So we have the Packbound Zealots. So these are the guys that can choose lethal sustain. I'll show you in a second. I'm going to put data sheet up. So we have a Chaos Lord with Marcus Lanesh, Cultist, 5-man unit of Legionnaires, and then a Rhino. The Rhinos for these Legionnaires most likely, and then the Chaos Lord goes in them. That's like their it's like their version of Knobs with a war boss, but doesn't hit nearly as hard. Even though in this they can get lethals. Then we have 2 units of Predator Destructors. I'll pull up here in a second. 2 Vindicators, a Hellbrute, 2 2-man units of Obliterators, 2 Possessed units, a Warp Talon, Beast of Nurgle, a 10-man unit of Blue Horrors. Shout out to the Blue Horrors. Any of you demon gets, let me know what you guys think. I'm about to go off on Blue Horrors. And then a unit of Nurglings. So to take it from the top, this is, imagine if you're used to Space Marines, it's like a, Iron Storm kind of detachment where they want to shoot and pop lethal or sustain. Now I'll pull up this data sheet real quick for you gets. Bam. Is the right one? Yeah. So we have the Chaos Space Marine, Predator Destructor, anti-infantry 4+, anti-infantry, additional AP against infantry, excuse me. And what happens here is that I'm pulling up the marker Chaos. They can choose to get lethal or sustain, but when they're a pack-bound zealot, they can get it on 5+ because of a Hellbrute. So we see on this list that he had a Hellbrute, and the Hellbrute has a 6-inch aura of allowing you to, let me pull that up out of here too, right here, was a 6-inch aura of allowing you to pick both instead of just one. So typically if you're just on your own, you have to roll a leadership check and then you get to choose lethal or sustain like we would with Dread Mob as Ork players, and then they take a leadership test and then they can kill themselves, but they still get it. So these guys are going to be getting lethal, sustain, 5+, pretty sick, pretty tough, and he has multiple of them. And then, pull up the one along. There we go. And then he also obviously has typical Vindicators. Mind you, these guys are also Beast of, they also have Mark of Nurgle, which means that they can choose to kind of like lone out. So they get stealth, and then because they're Nurgle marked, they get to be not targeted. That means you can't choose to pop a certain one that they don't want you to kill with your tank busters if you're not within 18 inches. So that would obviously be a factor if you really wanted to get off on one of these Vindicators or get off on one of these Predator Destructors because they're problematic or whatever it may be. So because they got this Hellbrute aura, and typically you would say, hey, I want to shoot multiple of these. It's like, nah, man, you only shoot one. Like, oh, Now, mind you, they also have obliterators. Now, obliterators, they would get lethal with their shooting, and they can choose to do indirect fire. So they'll disembark your trucks, and then they can kill, or they can disembark your trucks, and then on the next turn you're kind of just standing in the open. Or if something else disembark your trucks and you try to get out within a terrain piece, then they'll indirect the stuff that got out. It's a potent profile. I don't think I have it up on here. And then the funny part is the blue horrors, like our boy saying in chat, they're cheap infiltrators. That's one thing that I did not know that they could actually infiltrate. They're cheap infiltrators. They got a little bit of OC, and the fact that on the 4+ they break into a little dude is hilarious. And then they worsen leadership if you're within an inch, 6 inches of them by 1. So they make you a leadership worsen. And then what was the other thing they did? Yeah, and then they do like some mortal wounds or something. But they also have 4-up invul, and they'll survive a little more. If they do something else, let me know. But most of the time you don't see those. You don't see it. Let me get rid of the chain stick. What I have to yeah. So those are like the main killing problematic parts of his list. Of course, he also has a Nurgling unit for more infiltration as well. Yeah. So this list is, I can start pushing you completely back. And this is something we talk about a lot on the channel or just in our community is, what about the Mandos? What about the Snickra? Something like that, where you can play that additional phase. There's only 5 turns in the game. You only get 5 shooting phases, 5 combat phases, right? For example, at your access at optimally. The infiltration phase essentially is a phase itself, and you're not participating if you don't have Mandos or Snickra. I'm not saying he's wrong for that. I'm saying this is the matchup where you kind of start to look at it and you're like, that's kind of annoying, right? Okay, you could put a bunch of 10-man unit blue horrors in my face and some Nurgling trucks and make me sit back a little bit, take your positions in your gun lines, and then when I get through that and I take my tank busters to move up closer to you, the vehicle that's closest, I pop my Nurgle strat, and then you can't interact with me, and they don't really have anything to wall into you. And then you have weird stuff like Warp Talons and Possess that are running around kind of skirmishing my skirmishes, and then you have indirect fire to disembark what you're scared of so you can win the skirmish. So you can see how that could actually be quite a hard matchup. So shout out to James. That's still a great job, because that's that's a potent army that you would face there. I've ran into it before. It happens. So 83 points is a good score though, and it leads me to believe he was playing something like maybe Taken Hold, Ritual, anything with 6 objectives, whatever it may be. And sneak peek at the future, the other Ork player we're covering also lost round 3 and had a good score like that as well. So there's something going on here. I don't have the player pack. If I did, I'd love to see what was going on there. But we move on. So now we move on to his game 4, where he seeks redemption, and redemption is what he finds in the Blood Angels. So he decides he's gonna go get some power armor for power armors. And I see you guys in chat. You guys are saying you guys love the Storm Boys. Yeah, let me know in chat if you guys like the Storm Boys. And just because you don't have trucks doesn't mean battle wagons or kill rigs are bad. So that's good. So kill rigs and battle wagons are still solid, dude. Solid. Unless you're going to like a GT, then you maybe will feel the big impact. But going to just play casually, playing stuff is still fun. Don't worry about that. Then we have Blood Angels. Like I said, these are the Beach Angels, so they're going to get beached around. So we have 2 captains with jump pack, Commander Dante, 2 DCRs, 2 lieutenants, 1 with the combi weapon, and then the Sanguinor. Quite character heavy. Shout out to the Sanguinor. Intercessors for that sticky. 2 units of Blade Guard veteran and Scepter unit with plasma. 3 3-man units of Sanguinary Guard. Of course, they're -1 to wound, -1 to hit, but we're shooting them because we got DACA and tank busters. 2 units of scouts, and then 2 units of vindicators. So there's a chance that you took tank busters into the Sanguinary Guard, because you don't have to kill the vindicators to win the game. The Sanguinary Guard might just run up and beat the crap out of you, especially if the Sanguinor can heroic from space down into you. That being said, again, we like the tech pieces that he has for board presence, as a 10-man unit of Storm Boys moves up quite quickly. Some Warbosses and trucks. The 10-man unit of Flash gets very important for kind of controlling that mid-table and being able to set up Overwatch lines in something like a melee matchup where Blade Guard veteran, they want to pop Armor of Contempt and chill and try to tank some stuff, but at some point they want to walk across the table and start charging you. That's where all these soft body units, where they're T4 Marines, 2 wounds, some of these guys, right? Well, Blade Guard 3, but all in all, the Space Marine as a whole are typically 2 wounds. They start getting picked up, and all he can really commit to really close that distance will be the sanguinary guard if you position your flash kits according, where anything else is kind of really scared of giving overwatched and getting picked up before they get an interaction off. So that's typically the blade guard veterans, right? So because their reroll ones only works in combat of saves, their reroll ones of saves. And he does have a lot of these characters for fight first too, right? So he's definitely seeking to go into you and to go get you. So that's what you would have to do with that. And I'm sure he did, because how James ended up kind of really putting up the high score on this, getting a 93-point win into that get. And yeah, and having something like Zod, like I said, I love it. Storm Boys, whatever, getting those guys. I know the Vindicator can shoot into combat and it could pick up the Storm Boys over time, but being able to run up and just touch it right away and be like, you're not getting the line of sight you want. You're not going to get involved while I kill everything else. Let me go get that. There's a chance that someone could be set up to heroics. I'm not saying it's always going to be set up for you, but 10-man Storm Boys units now sets up the enemy to think about that when they move, when they deploy. And then you have Mork's Cunning. So you can be like, you didn't give me the option. I'll pull that back now. Use it for late game. Boom. And then you like that, because then you can get off on somebody with that. Yell orders at them, get them the strength 5, volume of punches, throw a grenade at someone. It's really fun. I like that. So James ended up getting a 93-point win there. And another get that's getting the win is Jay Hoon handed out the 5 WAAAGH Taktiks memberships. Whoa, for Jay Hoon. Huge channel member, supporter. Great love in that you get. Always supporting us, always hooking us up. It's very humbling. One day I owe you a squig beer or something, you know what I'm saying? So thanks, man. I appreciate you very much. And he said the zap gun, love it, right? How often do we get the zap guns going off? And when it hits, when the zap gun hits, you're like, yes, just, big damage. My battle wagon finally shot something. We don't have a tank anymore. GW, we don't have a tank anymore. So, it kind of feels like a tank, it feels good. So shout out to Jay Hoon. Much love, buddy. Thank you very much for the support. And thank you to everybody who supports. Leave a like if we're doing a good job. So then we move on. James, don't distract me, James. No, I'm just kidding. So we're going to game 5. So round 5, we have the Blood Angels again. And this time it's the Liberator Assault Group. I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to look at a lot of Blood Angels today. So we have Astroth, Chaplain with Jump Pack, Chief Librarian, and Commander Dante. I just read something in chat. You're funny. Assault Intercessor Squad, Assault with Jump Packs, 3 of them, but sorry, not 3. 2 units of Assault Intercessor with Jump Pack, a 10-man unit of a Death Company with Jump Pack, another 10-man unit of Death Company with Jump Packs, 2 Lancers, an Infiltrator, a big brick of Sanguinary Guard, and then 2 Scout Squads. This is what I'm typically used to seeing with Blood Angels. Couple gun platforms, bigger bricks of Jump Pack Boys, and then a couple 5-man unit Jump Pack Boys. Nothing's wrong with it, just what we're typically going to see. But the meta has been quite interesting, as we're going to go over more lists today, as what we do here. The big issue for them as well is, like we spoke about in the other matchup, right? Once your flash gets take to mid-table, and he doesn't have, a ball predator would be more problematic for flash kits. But in this case, having Lancers means that you can confidently put a flash kit unit kind of mid the table, or wherever your natural expansion, where they're the best long line of sight is for them to overwatch. And you can say, okay, as soon as jump packs come out, as soon as your Death Companies come out, as soon as whatever decides to close the distance with me and it doesn't have a 2-up armor saves, I'm instantly re-rolling the hit roll into you. I might even save my lethals just so I can lethal you to bomb to death. And then once you get kind of kicked off into my flash kits, then it's all go. That's if you can really close the distance into my flash kits, because he has Zodgrod, and then he has a lot of other stuff in this field as well. I like that it's interesting to me that he only has 1 unit of punch and gets, right? How do you guys feel about that, right? This is such the inverse of at least my style when it comes to, like, on the WAAAGH, I only have 1 more boss and 5 knobs. So how do you guys feel about that? Very different, and I love to see it. He was a cunning gift for that with his that DAKA wall. For taking out those Blood Angels. Got to be prepared for Blood Angels. Still a good game. You can see 79-point win there. Then we move on to his last game. So that was a strong game. It was a hard game. We move on to his last game, which is going into Chaos Demons, Legions of Excess. So Excess. So these guys are a little bit of a meta contender. So we have 3 Keepers of Secrets, each with a different enhancement. We're not going to talk about at the moment. And then we have 2 units of Demonettes, 2 units of Nurglings, a Plague Bearer, and then three units of Fiends, but luckily for our Git, there was only one big 6-man unit of Fiends. Then we have 1 Chariot, 2 Seekers. Now, a lot of the time, people, when you're used to playing into demons, you're like, keepers carry, baby, keepers carry, they're gonna do everything. They definitely hit hard, definitely can be problematic for orcs sometimes if we don't have the right tools. We used to struggle into thick stuff. Now, the interesting thing here that you wouldn't expect, luckily he only has one of these bricks, is that they can do something kind of cagey here with the demonettes, where they can take the damage you would put onto the demonettes in any phase, and they could bleed them, or sorry, into the fiends. Excuse me. They can take the damage from the fiends that you target into the fiends. If a demonette unit is nearby them, they can take the damage they took, the fiends themselves took, and bleed it off into a demonette. The demonette has a 4 of feel no pain. The demonette can try to take a 4 of feel no pain to survive that. So you can end up having these like really durable fiend units. He doesn't have too many of them, but you can tell he's kind of leaning into that. He just ran out of fiends. And 1 chariot, 65 points, kind of like a little orc truck, but it's not a truck. It's not a transport. I just mean it's valued and utilized like an orc truck would be, where it kind of gets the game kick-started, runs around, a little tougher to kill than you'd expect it to be with its invulns. And then a little bit of small units for scoring, other than those 3 demonettes. I think that our boy has all the tools for this, though. Of course, like we like to say, it's funny because flash kits really do work into demons so well. And I know flash kits, you're looking at this attachment, you're like, does it only run off flash kits? No, but you can really play your game plan around this enhancement and this being a part of your list. You can tell that he's leaning into DAKA. Therefore, how he was deploying, how he's defending himself, his layers of his lines of offense, and how he was kind of scoring primary had to do with him positioning those flash kits to kind of get the game kickstarted and to control parts of the board. That way he can kind of get action from those tank busters when it was their time to go. I know that because he has so many mechs on the table. I mean, he was constantly kind of giving out orders to other stuff to do things outside of the wall potentially, or be exceptional during the wall. Like the other 5-man units of Storm Boys, the random Grots, the Zodgrod being able to be given an order. I don't know about Ludas, right? But we talk about this too. Maybe you'd give Ludas +1 feel no pain. The plus time flow heal pain. Sorry, maybe you give Ludas +1 to hit the 5-man unit, and then they start going off on something like the demonettes that are on objectives, and then it's like, okay, I'm rerolling the hit roll and hitting on 5 demonettes. Haha, that could feel pretty solid. So I'd love to see how this actually played out. Very different to my style, but shout out to Mr. James Ball for going 5-1. And just one more time, we're gonna look at his DAKA detachment, where we have Taktikal Brigade. We have 3 shock attack guns, 1 big mech and mega armor with mech captain as the warlord, 2 solo mechs. Tell me what you guys think about that in the chat and the comments. 1 with more cunning, 1 with god boomer, 1 war boss, Zodgrod Wortsnagga. Zodgrod is only with a minimum size unit of Grots. Of course, he can go in the truck. We don't know that he did, but I'm assuming he probably did. We have a 10-man unit of Storm Boys. I love that we're seeing it. Interested to see if it makes more appearances on the tabletops, on the top tables and such. You let me know. I'm telling you, in a casual pickup, RTT, 10-man Storm Boy is pretty fun, and it does pretty well. 2 5-man units of Storm Boys, 3 trucks, 1 battle wagon with zap gun and art case, 10 flash kits, 3x11 Grots, 1 5-man unit of Ludas, 5 knobs, and then 3 tank busters. So, whoa! For Mr. James Ball. And like someone said in the chat, that Laba hitting that indirect, boy. So Laba. Now we move into Jake Harding, the next list. Now, Jake was also at this event. He ended up getting 12th place from Vanguard Tactics, homie. Beachhead Brawl again, like we said, for 202 players. And so yeah, he 5-1. Let's take a look at my Git's list and his path to victory. So here we have different yet same. Same but different, right? It's one of those things where you're like, tank busters. Don't worry. There's more to talk, more to discuss. We're not stuck in the data sheets. I'm just presenting this data to you. So we have the Big Mech and Mega Armor, 3 shock attack guns, 3 war bosses, 2 5-man Storm Boy units, 3 trucks, 3 breaker boys, 3 tank busters, a 5-man unit of flash kits, a Gretchen unit, and then a burner boy unit, and a big 10-man unit of flash kits. Now, we are completely tilted and leaning into the new data sheets and the new detachments. Member of Team Vanguard Tactics, I expect nothing less. But for the layman, for the rest of us, mere mortals, no, I'm just kidding. For the rest of us players, I need to stress, you do not need this to have success and to do well, right? We're going to discuss it. We're going to look over it because it's what's happening and everybody else will be discussing it. But we're going to look at this with a more layman sort of eye, right? What's going on here? Why would people want to constantly spam 3x3 of the same data sheet? And, is it the only way to win? No, it's that when you're going to a very, very large event and you need to get big scores yourself to end up getting high rankings, get as close to 100 as possible, really break people down, you tend to look for what's the most efficient and the most effective into what's meta. Now, what is what's meta? The meta is very thick, chunky boys, right? You got demons, you got vehicles, you got knights, you got demons, Tyranids, you got all that stuff everywhere. And now orcs have 2 direct data sheets that came out at the same exact time that go great into those things. Therefore, if you're looking for big wins, big points, you're going to take what goes really well into that. And it's not that it's the only thing to do, it's just it's statistically the best thing to do right now via the dice and the math hammer behind it. But I promise you, it's not the only way to do well. There's plenty of lists, people that we've covered and people we've spoken to that can do well without this. But understand, the meta is what these guys are tuned for right now. It only takes a few point changes for either us or the meta itself to change, that at least the Breaker Boys might slide back, as they're in contention with a lot of other things. You get a lot of arguments for knobs, a lot of arguments for beast bosses and snaggas, and then of course you got good old-fashioned Gaz, which is essentially a Super Saiyan Breaker Boy. So we're looking here like this is not something to be weary of. Just understand, big players going to big events trying to get big numbers are going to spam something that goes great into all the big data sheets. It's just kind of that simple. Sometimes at top 40K 6-round events doesn't mean the rest of us can't win and don't win. I promise you, it's great. And like some people are saying in chat, not a fan of it in Taktikal Brigade. So I find it very compelling that Jake is actually running this here. So let's take a look at his path to victory as to why was this so successful and why did it maybe fall off at the end, or not in the end, but really in the middle, right? So let's see his path to victory. So we go on to his first game, Beach Brawlers Gladius Task Force, something that you can expect in the meta, which guess what? Tank Busters and Breaker Boys do great into Space Marines. So we have a Lieutenant, Malnius Kaga, Rebute Gilliman, 1 unit of Assault Intercessors, Heavy Intercessors, and then Basic Intercessors. 1 Ballistas, a big 6-man unit of Blade Guard, Eradicator Squad, a big unit of Hellblasters, Redemptor Dreadnought, Stern Guard Veteran Squad, and then Terminator, minimum size unit of Terminators with Storm Bolters. The Stern Guard and the Hellblasters are very potent at what they do. Definitely just don't have the targets to do it into this, right? No battle wagon Stern Guard actually are anti-infantry, right? So they actually could do quite well into you. I'm lying. I was thinking about Librarius where they take out vehicles. Brain fart. Mind you, you take the Lieutenant, put them with the Hellblasters is what I'm assuming they could be with, and actually do quite well as well. Very efficient shooting platforms here. Very delicate shooting platforms. We love that we actually have stuff that can shoot back at them in this detachment as orc players. Now, you could use for example, your Tank Busters to try to pop a Ballistas Dreadnought, right? We have a Ballistas Dreadnought on this list, you can see, but it's only 130 points. What's the real value there? The real value is trying to take advantage of the fact that you can kill something like Rebute Gilliman late in the game, after the Break Boys take him down for the first time, right? Because he will be taken down and then come back to life. Their list is all big guns. Therefore, he might be putting Rebute a little earlier up, turn maybe 3 to get in your face if he has to hold you back as an orc player. He doesn't have a lot of beef and a lot of meat. Therefore, you have the whole battlefield to either punch or shoot any of these targets. Blade Guard veterans hate to see Breaker Boys, hate to see Tank Busters. Breaker Boys love to see Ballistas Dreads. They love to see Eradicators. They love to see everything on this list, even Terminators with Combi Bolters, because they don't have a Storm Shield, so they're 3 flat, 3 wounds. This is a perfect example of why people bring the same data sheet 3 times into the meta. It's because you'll get a 99-point win when you go straight into something like that. That's like, anything I make contact with is worth it. Let's go. Whoa, right? And that's what happens. So nothing shame about that. Great job there. Love to see it. Love Crump and Space Marines, especially when they're running double oath. Then we move into the next game with this Adeptus Custodes. Now, this one you have to be a more cheeky git because they're trying to do what you're doing. Quite elite. The thing here is that we're actually good at shooting now. We're not trying to shoot. We're good at shooting now in this detachment. Weird point value of 1970, James. What's up with that? 2 units of Blade Champions and then Trajan Valores. 1 unit of Guardians, of Big Guardians. 3 units of 3 Terminators. They're large Terminators. They're kind of cool. Very, very, very expensive for just 4 wound. I think they're 4 wound Terminators. They might be 5 now. I don't even remember. They're killy. They're small, kind of 3-man unit. Orks just will eat them up with this kind of effective killing list. Now we have 1 grav tank. I like that they only brought 1. Sometimes it's just they don't do anything if they bring too many, but they can pop our transports with it. And then 2 units of wardens. Big difference here in this game. The fact that now the wardens have to choose: are you taking your feel no pain versus the busters or the breakers? That's what this game comes down to. Can you dictate terms to them to get it off on them? Sadly, your flash kits won't go crazy ham in this game. They won't be able to kill everything. Now, there's a good chance that they could, drastically damage one of these units if they're just set out in the open and hurt it, even if they're taking a 2-up save just by mere volume. But you can use your flash kits to get into combat because they can get +1 strength from an order and +1 strength from the WAAAGH. They can fall back and charge and do interesting things like that. So they're not completely out of contention in the game just because they can't shoot too well into all these units. So yeah, I like that he actually ended up using having a win here into this unit, this army. Now, what I would say is the battle wagon could end up playing a really interesting factor here because they don't really pop the battle wagon in an effective manner, since they only have 1 of those tanks. So love to see that with a 78-point win there. Not the easiest. You got to be aware that all of these gets are elite and everybody wants an attention, and you can't really let the Terminators get in your backfield. This is where we talk about board control and presence, where having your units all over the table with your transports being your safety net, that they can't just drop down and charge into you, is the important part. So you can get the initiative as an Ork player. Initiative means you're not only getting off on them first, but it's on your terms and on your part of the field that you want it to be. So just because they're elite doesn't mean you can give them the table space because you're expecting them to drop down. So I'm expecting Jake got in there and got stuck in. Now we move on to his 3rd game. This is the game that he did take a loss. He did take a loss here. Let me clear some. Clear some of these up. You guys up? What's up? What's up, late wall? Whoa! Let me look at this real quick. How's everybody doing in chat? Huh? You guys are killers. You guys doing great. Everybody's doing loving that Taktiks Brigade. It's funny because we did a poll as for what was the most used attachment in our Discord, and we had exactly 53%, just like we're seeing as the Ork win rate this last weekend. So it's kind of funny in that. I just wanted to bring that up. I was supposed to bring it up way earlier and be awesome, but instead I didn't. So it's cool. Now we move on to his 3rd game, which is the Necron's Canoptic Court. Now I do have data sheets for this as well. Let us discuss this disgusting Necron nemesis. So we have 1 Catan Shard of the Nightbringer, Luminars to Xeras. Luminar, you should not exist with that feel no pain you get. You know that. They took away Maz's. You about time you take yours away, right? Mr. Ivan Aura as well. Plasmancer, 1 Royal Guardian Warden. Technomancers, 2 of them. 1 with the Seminole Spectrum. 2 units of Immortals, 1 10-man unit. We're going to discuss these combos real quick. Let me just discuss these units. 2 units of Doomstalkers, followed by 2 unit big bricks of Wraiths. 1 unit of Flayed One, 1 individual Destroyer, 1 unit of Ophidians, and then a Tombblade. Tombblades are like bikes. Ophidians are little deep striking scoring guys along with the Locust, and then Flayed Ones infiltrate. Now, the real meat and potatoes here. 2 units of Wraith plus the combos, Doomstalkers for the long-range firepower, and then the 1 big brick of Immortals getting most likely double characters while still being within range of this Luminor Cesaros. So what do I mean by that? Let's pull up the data sheets real quick. So for Necrons. This is their long-range firepower platform originally before Doomsday Arcs went so down in points. Now Doomsday Arcs are very large and unruly, kind of hard to, hide and do anything with. These guys are not. They're very soft. They're T8, 4 wounds, 12 wounds, but they're quite cheap. The interesting here is that they do Overwatch moderately well with their 5-ups, but there's other units that can Overwatch well. Strength 14, -3/3 damage. Good into elite infantry. They have blast. The next data sheet that's actually on their list that's interesting, besides the wraiths, right? Because we know what the wraiths do with their durability. The Plasmancer. So the Plasmancer is what's going to end up going onto the Immortal brick, right? So where's that Immortal brick down here? We have a big unit of 10 Immortals. These guys are going to be enjoying a 5-up critical, and I believe those are Tesla carbines. So I think those give sustain. And I should have already pulled them. Yeah. So the Necron Immortal, so they get 5-up. So when they do Overwatch, I pulled the Immortals real quick. Immortal, they would get 5+ on that and then get to re-roll it. And it ends up pretty much going off pretty hard. I should pull this up earlier. I hate this unit. As an Ork player, you actually kind of hate this unit a little bit. Here we go. Should have pulled this up sooner, guys. So here's a Tesla carbine. These are assault and sustain 2. So that means they will be critical 5+ sustain 2. And then if you're on an objective marker, they re-roll the wound roll of 1s, and then reroll 1s naturally. And then if you're on objective marker, it's fully. So with that being said, those guys go pretty hard on Overwatch when they shoot you. And then they also have a Plasmancer, a Warden, which allows them to fall back and shoot. Because normally you just want to tag those guys. In this case, you can't really. And then Luminor Caesaris allows them to reduce AP when they're targeted themselves. So there's a lot of dynamic of this is playing as a big castle of durability and some killing potential. Because then we move on to the Wraiths. Now, the Wraiths would be taking on the Technomancer. So the Technomancer gives them a 5-up Feel No Pain, and then he helps you regenerate guys. So you can bring those guys back after they start getting killed with those Wraiths. So he's giving them Feel No Pains, and he can end up taking, as we've seen on this list, one of those gets right here had the ability to infiltrate. So he can take one of those Wraith units, he can infiltrate them, take position on the field, and then make you kind of come get him as he's already scoring primary. He positions up with his, flayed ones can actually end up screening if you got something that wants to go into him, or they really just score. You got to keep him in that. I assume in this mission, you're keeping him safe because you need something to score with. So yeah, they are annoying because Orks typically want to clear out a Necron unit in kind of like one activation, typically on the wall, typically with high volume of punches, typically with sustainer lethal from something like Warhorde, or maybe the flash is popping off really hard. Really hard to fully kill one of these Wraith units, and it's hard to take position as the Ork player because of these Immortals trying to do the same thing that we do. They're trying to do that that we want to do to them. They want to do to us to a certain degree. Yeah. So, not necessarily surprised. I would like to see the mission. Necrons are kind of hit or miss if Orks will, I think we do quite well into them. Like, we have the tools, but they're one of those armies that is just kind of sometimes the dice go their way with survivability, interactions, and they regen a bunch of guys, or we just bounce for damage. And they have good tools, so it is what it is. And he got a really high score, like I said, with an 85-point win. So it's like we spoke about the other Ork player over here with James Ball, where he lost the same round but a similar score. So I'd love to know what this mission was. Yeah, so that being said, we move on. Not a big deal. We get a great game, I'm sure. And we move on to his 4th game. So he's going into Necrons again to get redemption into the Crons with Star Scatter. So people are still playing it. You should expect that if you're going to see Necrons, a lot of diverse Necrons out there in the world right now. So we got a Hexmark Destroyer, followed by Emotech Stormlord, a Locust Lord, Technomancer, and then Silent King. 1 Reanimator, 1 Brick of Wraith, followed by 2 Doomsday Arc, 2 Flayed ones, Locust Destroyer, and then 2 Triax Stalkers. These guys pull cover essentially and are like kind of kickstarting units, 110 points. They got moderate guns. They're moderately tough. They got 4-up invulns. They have like, I think 14 or 12 wounds. like T8 though, but the invuln is the real factor. And mind you, they're in Scatterstar. They can take all the buffs and everything like that too. All in all, these guys don't, now that they've gotten nerfed, they're not as potent as we used to see them to be in the meta. This is one of those matchups where I do think Orks do present great tools into that. And why I say that is Doomsday Arc hate tank busters, right? Of course, each to own as what's happened to you in your games. But tank busters typically want to go into something that's lower than T10. That way they can wound them on twos. And so tank busters being able to actually pop those guys is amazing. Breaker Boys being able to really punish something like the Silent King could really be a big deal. And the fact that he just played into Necrons will keep him nice and sharp as to what's kind of the data sheets for everything, even though it's slightly different. What he can do, you got to remember that the wraiths are the wraiths and what there will be, because he still has that Chronomancer right there, the Technomancer, like we discussed, for the 5-up Feel No Pain. Right, so he can still do that little cheeky get stuff, and that's actually quite common for people to bring that. So a lot of time you're worried about the Necrons because they can do a ton of damage to whatever favorite unit is, and there's a chance you'll bounce. But this is why people tilt completely into the damage, like pedal to the metal, because if you're going to lead into I just want to do damage and I don't really want to have deal with too many tools, time management, a lot of overthinking, I kind of just want to wall and get stuck in a lot of events, I got to play a lot of rounds over the weekend. A lot of tough stuff exists. I don't want to have to think too hard. I want to just be not overly think too hard is what I mean. That's why people go, I'm just going to bring the biggest, hardest hitting stuff, because when you run into something like Scatterstar, you're like, I want the answer to not just be outthink you, but I actually just want to be able to crump you and actually make you so scared to for me to close the distance that you just don't get in the game. And even though I end up dead ultimately as an Ork player, sometimes I've controlled the table the whole game by just my presence and my ability to score. And late turn wall, boom, I win. So late game wall, so boom. I don't know if it happened here. Just saying, it happens with Orks more often than not. 88-point win, great job there. Then when I said happens more often than not, I mean with Necrons. You can kind of hold them at bay if you just encroach on their positions. So we move on to the fifth game. I knew that. Fifth game where he's going into Black Templars, Righteous Crusaders. Kind of cool. See Black Templars all over again. That model though, disrespecting us. Yeah, you ain't disrespecting us no more, ain't you? Then so we got Captain with Jump Pack, a Castellan, High Marshal Hellbrick, Judiciar, and then Lieutenant with Kami Walter, Intercessor, 1 brick of Primaris Crusaders, Intercessor brick with Jump Packs, 2 Lancers, Infiltrator, a Redeemer, and then 2 units of Sword Brethrens with 1 Reaver unit and then a Scout unit. Like always, these guys like to get really elite and crump you. Primaris Sword Brethren, dude. I remember when you guys were all over the meta and just crumping everything for what they can do. So much output, so much damage too. Rerolling wounds. They'll blend through just about any Ork unit that we got. Now, we like to talk about how awesome Breaker Boys are. You know what they don't like to see? This get right here, this Redeemer, right? Something we talk about all the time with Breaker Boys is they're awesome for what they do, great damage. We missed it, we lacked it. We love that it's damage 3, but Land Raiders being able to overwatch them and devastate the entire unit is a harsh reality that you must deal with. Now, can tank busters pop it? Absolutely, but it usually takes multiple units. The SAG can go off. Don't get me wrong. I've gone off and destroyed everything in the world with shotgun air guns, like you, but bring that up. Now, again, in this sort of matchup, when you're playing against melee Marines, maybe a mirror matchup, whenever comes up where people are playing with these missiles, just like I just mentioned, the Breaker Boys are susceptible to Overwatch. Sword Brethren can be. Now, not as easy because the Land Raider Redeemer, they can just kind of vomit them out and the guys can run out because they have assault ramps. But nonetheless, that's where you do have the ability to really, really punish the enemy on their one commitment and get a trade. So they come out with just impact, intercessors. You pick them up at flash gets without getting too close to them. They try to close the distance on you again. You overwatch them with the Overwatch the Sword Brethren, damage the unit outright, or kill them. It's happened very often. I promise you, as an Ork player, take position with your flash gets in these melee matches, especially knowing that he doesn't have volume of shooting at range. He does have the Redeemer, don't get me wrong, but he has to close the distance with that Redeemer to get that flamer off on you. It's terrifying. I get it. but at some point you're gonna have to take a line of fire so that you can get off on his melee army units to try to close it, his jump pack units to try to take position on you, because breaker boys themselves are also, vulnerable. So if you can get commitment for the enemy to kind of get kicked off, ride those 4-up invulns for a little bit. Sometimes have not the whole unit committed, so you can maybe, pull and actually not get fully cleared and then walk out to do the work. There's a lot of ways to get it kick-started, but just know flash gets overwatching into any space marines, demons, stuff that doesn't have great armor saves is game changing. If you can get, a trade, get 2 unit kills off of it, is a huge deal. So I love to see that. And then we move on to his last matchup, which was Gladius Task Force. What's up with this? He called it Beachhead. Isn't that what the other, like the first game mission was called? Whatever. So we have a Captain in Gravis armor with Artificer armor. Super and unexpectedly durable. That's what I would say. I believe he gets a Feel No Pain. He gets to half damage. So he's pretty cool. Combi Lieutenant, Manius Calgar and the Rubate Gilliman. Intercessors for Sticky, Assault Intercessor with Jump Pack, a Company of Heroes for, I believe, Calgar. Lancer. Is that 3 Lancers? 3 Lancers. 3 Lancers, 2 Infiltrators, and then 2 Vindicators. Love to see that. Because I'm not too fearful of all the Lancers, considering that, you're bringing the trucks. And someone's bringing up here in chat, I'm curious at how he deployed and what changed based off the matchup. Yes, those are actually good things. We should close with discussing some of that. Now, for this matchup, this is where, again, like we spoke about when you first went to Ultramarines, you want those big scores and you want the tools that do great into what's in the meta and what's popular. And in this case, Ultramarines he got an 88-point win there, another one of his big scoring wins. And shout out to Jake Harding. Now, interesting how his wins were of equal or, less score than his 1 loss, right? So I'm curious as to what that mission may be. If someone finds out in the chat or hasn't let us know, let us know eventually in the comments. That'd be pretty sick. Let's look at his list real quick. Big Mech in Mega Armor, 3 Shock Attack Guns, a God Boomer, 3 War Bosses, 2 Storm Boys, 3 Trucks, 6 Breakers, 5-man Burner Boy, 10 Flash Kits, 5 Flash Kits, a Gretchen unit, and then 3 Tank Busters. Very elite. And like we said, how is everything actually getting off on this table? So in matchups like we spoke about with the Necrons, where they kind of want to stick back and not do anything, these are good positions where you could bring Breaker Boys in, because they're not going to close the distance on you for your other ones. One of these Breaker Boy units could end up in reserve, because if they close the distance to take that, you can punish them with Flash Kits, you can push them with Tank Busters, you can throw Bomb Squigs at them. So then Necron doesn't want to do that yet. As an Ork player, putting stuff in 2 reserves to draw the enemy out, to play the edges of the table and try to stop you, is how you kind of end up baiting them, especially if you don't have like infiltrators. Now, there are some matchups, like we said, within Necrons, for example, where you want the Tank Busters to be able to get to line of sight and be able to really get off on those, something like a Doomsday Arc, but the Doomsday Arc has crazy range compared to a Tank Buster. Therefore, a truck might be the only way you can end up kind of closing this and get close enough to actually pop it when it's that go turn as well. And the inverse, there are some terrain layouts where you can just stage in your deployment zone, walk out into the mid table with your Tank Busters and get off. Don't even need a transport for that. So keep in mind, if you're going to a GT, you typically have the player packet and you actually know what's happening and what terrains and what missions, and you should definitely plan accordingly for that. So that's where practice on deployment plays a big difference, especially if you're playing something this elite and not bringing all of those transports. So with that being said, great job to Mr. Jake Harding. And overall, to the 2 gets that good work at the not you, Owens, I don't know you. That did good at the Beachhead Brawl, going 5-1 with the Taktiks Brigade, keeping it cunning out here. You get, and we move on. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Ivan. I can't say your last name because let me pull up where he's from. This was the Frost Hammer, and this was actually in Russia. So shout out to Russia. Shout out to Ivan in Russia. Yeah, so it does have ELO rating, Strike Force. Yeah, it was everything I was looking at. I was like, no, everything's what we be doing out here. So nice to see the gets. I haven't, seen the Russian player base around the wall tactics in a while. So Ivan ended up going 4-1 as well with this WAAAGH Taktiks Brigade, with a little bit of maybe a Russian twist, maybe we can call it. So let me get rid of some of these data not these data sheets. Let me get some of these slides again real quick, because sometimes I have too many tabs open and then I start clicking and fat fingering and all types of stuff. All right, cool. All right, cool. So we have Boss Snickrot. So is Boss Snickrot on your Taktikal Brigade list? This is something that we talk. I hear people bring up all the time. One weekend I'll say I don't like Snickrot on the detachment. Next weekend someone goes hard with Snickrot on the detachment. It's what we like to do, right? That's how that's the Ork community in a nutshell. They're like, yeah, I heard you, boss. I like to do this though. Great job by that. So we have a Big Mech and Mega Armor with Mech Captain. That's the one thing that's unrefutable. That's fantastic. 2 Big Mechs with shock attack guns. Nice to see a little bit of a break from 3 tank busters. Even for me, like personally, I've been using mostly 2. Now, have I used 3? Yes, but it's kind of nice sometimes to be like, no more Doc. I want to crump you. So with that being said, he has a war boss with squad leader. So we've talked about squad leader. I was always direct about, I don't love it. I don't love how it works. But if you're going to do it, you got to full commit. And my boy full committed. My boy brought Snickrot and 2 units of commandos along with squad leader. Then he has a war boss in mega armor with Mork's cunning. Maybe just putting it on the battlefield. It's not scared of indirect fire. So if you don't go first, you're like, what are you gonna do? Shoot mortars at me, bro? Whatever. Put a lava at me. So then you can pick them up and put them in reserve when you feel like it, and then redeploy whatever else you want. Or you can choose to just be hyper effective, like aggressive, put them right on the line in the truck they're in, and then make the enemy respond and then pull them back. Oh, well, if they're in a truck, they can't do the pullback thing, but something else could be threatening in that way. We do have a battle wagon on here as well, by the way, right? So 2 units of 5 storm boys, 3 trucks, 1 battle wagon, 1 5-man units of burners, a flash kit 10-man brick, 1 grot unit, 2 commandos, 1 unit of ludas, 1 big brick of mega knobs with twin kill saws, 2 tank buses, and then a battle wagon with the art case and zap gun. Let's go. Now you could put 2 tank busters and a burner boy, for example, into a battle wagon if you chose to, or just a Luda unit, like we said before. I typically like to assume the Luda units for scoring, not for really looking to do damage. On the other list that we discussed, it might have, but that's because there's multiple solo mechs to give orders. In this case, there are not, which is something that I also found was interesting. So Snickrot was the one that was up there with the commandos giving them orders. Love to see it. Then you have the war boss giving the other guy order. So Snickrot's I'm not assuming he was attached to the commando unit. He might have been. I'm crazy. Let me know, Russians, but I don't think so. So with that being said, every other asset can end up in a truck and in a battle wagon, other than the storm boys, which could easily go in reserve. And actually, one of those storm boy units could go in the battle wagon if you really wanted to, which yes, I have done, and it feels pretty good to disembark, move, advance, charge, right? So disembark 3, move, advance, charge, especially after the battle wagon is kind of moved up to take a position, but not really that often would I do it. Just saying, it happens. It happens. You get the burner boys are something that I've been trying more. Still not love them and try to avoid them as much as I can, but sometimes you just got 60 points, right? You let me know what you think. Am I just hating on burner boys? Am I just hating on burner boys? I won't know. So let's take a look at our gets path to victory, because he didn't go until he lost that last round, and the last round he lost to the guy who got first place. So no shame in that. No shame in that, especially because you won all your games up to this, right? I feel different losing the very last game than losing the first game and then winning all of them, right? There's a different spectrum. So great job here, but we will look at the path to victory. So first game, it is the Adeptus Astartes Firestorm Assault Force. Now this, I've played into this style, and they can do some work into orcs simply because the flamers do a great job, and then now the meltas have gotten to strength 10, so it's like oh okay, so things can get kind of cool. We have Adrex, Agatone, Apothecary, Blade Guard Ancient, and Caladius Assassin, Intercessor, Blade Guard Squad, Raider Brick, Hellblaster Brick, Inceptor, 2 Scouts, a Drop Pod, Gladiator Lancer, Redeemer, and then a Repulsor. So in reality, this Blade Guard unit does get the champion, and these guys could end up getting +1 to wound, so they can end up doing quite well in the combat. And they do usually go with Adrax Agatone from what I remember, or I think he goes with the Eradicators. It's been a while, right? Yeah, the biologist might go with the Blade Version. And then other than that, he's just typical Flamer, Melta, typical stuff. 78-point win. Surprisingly there for Ivan, because he was like, oh, I got all the tools. Yet, when you're trying to play with so many kind of like everything's in the transport and then the commandos are on the open, it can get twisted if you don't go first, and then these guys end up just taking their flamers and closing the distance on you, right? And they're like, hey, I heard you're hiding behind that building, Commando, and they started trying to take out your units. That's the scary part of running one of these like alpha strikey kind of play early 20 mandos. Each one has like a character nearby them. It's a lot of points. People can kind of get the initiative off on you if things don't go your way. The drop pod could be a kind of cool in this case where you're like, nope, no cool drop pod spot for you, haha. So very odd, I'm sure. As you guys know, those off the wall kind of spectrum lists do kind of catch people off guard, because 78-point win there. And then we move on to the second game. So the second game was against the Black Templars. So we have High Marshal Helbrick, Castellan, 2 lieutenants, 2 marshals, 2 units of Centurion Devastators, 2 eliminators, 2 recursors, 3 units of Sword Brethren, and then 2 units of Stern Guard with melee and a Thunder Strike Storm Speeder. So the fun part here was the Devastators. I was very taken back by this list, as it's very different, which kind of just shows the difference in the Russian meta, I guess, right? We always talk about how the Australians, we always like to make fun of our Aussies, right? Aussie, we as in the rest of the community like to make fun of how the Aussies down under have their weird off the wall meta. And here we're taking a sneak peek into the Russian meta that we don't get to see too much. And you can see this guy brought a lot of units for Black Templars, but he brought some that could shoot, some that could fight, getting more activations out of it. I kind of like that. 18 units, which does get kind of MSU a little bit for Black Templars. So pretty cool. Then we move on to this third game. This was his highest scoring game, where he goes into Ash Dominatarum Bridgehead Strike Force. So let's see what this version of Strike Force might look like. We have Gaunt's Ghost for their cheeky infiltration up and downy, blah, blah, blah. Ursula Creed for her orders. 3 units of Tempestus Command Squads. 3 units of Aquilons. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, okay. 3 units of Aquilons. 3 units of Kazakins. 1 unit of Ratlings. 4 5-man units of Scions, and then 2 big bricks of Scions, followed by 2 Torons Primes, and then a brick of Death Riders. The real only difference here is typically you wouldn't bring the extra non-jump pack Scions without jump packs in the primes, and you would just bring more like meat stuff or to play the primary best you can a little bit, and maybe some Sentinels or something from what I remember. Other than that, he has all the gun shooting. But when we talk about how Orks win games with board presence, this is what I mean. Like, they can come down and annihilate you, but they have to pop the vehicle first, and then other stuff has to annihilate you. They are very soft, and the fact that he's commandos means that anything that was on the table, he might have just wad turn 1 or really got stuck in. So I'm hoping he might have maybe been hyper aggressive here. Whatever was on his deployment zone, he might have just charged off into and said, well, you might start dropping down in my field, but I'm going to just take your home field, and kind of flip the battlefield on its head there. Could have happened. Not sure, because, it's a bridgehead list. So they're all over the place. But 90-point win there. Straight job to you, Ivan. They move into his 4th game, which was against Necron's Canoptic Court. So again, we have Luminor Suzeris, followed by 2 Plasmancers, 2 Royal Wardens, and then 2 Technomancers. 2 big bricks of 20 Warriors, 1 Deathmark, 3 Ophidians, and then 3 Heavy Destroyers, followed by 3 units of Wraith. This list is quite potent. I like this list. I think that this is probably the hardest list that I've seen them go into so far. Very respectable. So Luminor Suzeris, having an aura of he allows enemy to have AP to be reduced by 1. So if he's near battle line, that means these warriors all have essentially Armor of Contempt built in. If they're near him, he's a lone op. He's a warrior, feel no pain. Really annoying. Then we have the Plasmancers that can give those 2 bricks of warriors 5 up criticals. 2 wardens. That way these bricks can actually fall back and shoot. Typically, Necrons can't do that. And then 2 units of Technomancers for the 5-up piano paints and the rates. Everything else is kind of just a little bit of shooting firepower and scoring. I would say these 2 heavy destroyers, if they were turned into boats or the stalkers, that would get quite potent quite quickly, or even these Ophidians into like bikers for a little point difference. This list is really on the edge of just a lot potent, right? A lot of meat on this list, regenning units, stuff like that. We love the fact that we have the ability with our own infiltrators to try to disrupt the fact that he wants to infiltrate with his wraiths right away and early. And the commandos being able to run into these big bricks of warriors is a huge factor. Yes, I know they're going to fall back and shoot, but the fact is that they want to overwatch any orc units that typically want to walk into the table. And the fact that they could run up and just say, hey, I'm going to tag you, and then you got to fall backwards. Typically, they're not going to want to try to fall through you. Is awesome. Love to see it. To get in position with your trucks and then your tank busters, and then you drop out, do damage to the wraiths best you can, and just keep the pressure on them, because Necrons want to march into the middle of the table. The Mandos might have been the way to kind of hold them off from that. And so pretty sick to see that. And great job by Ivan in 76.1 there. And then we move on to his 1 loss, which was into the Blood Angels. So Blood Angels making their way around the world all over again. This was Angelic Inheritors. So we have 1 Captain Ingravis armor with the Relic Blade and the Icon Blade. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to talk about the list that lost, that our Orc player lost to, pull up some of their data sheets, maybe try to get a better look on how this might have happened. Then we have a Captain with Jump Pack, followed by 1 Mephiston Librarian, 2 Librarian and Phobos armor, 1 Tech Marine, and an Astaroth. I haven't seen that guy in a long time. Did he get a new model? Probably not. And then the Sanguino. 1 unit of Intercessors, followed by Incursors, and then a unit of Scouts. A 5-man unit of Death Company, Marines with Jump Packs, and Eradicator Brick. 1 10-man unit of Assault Intercessors, and then 3 Man Eliminators, followed by a Vindicator Brick. Gosh, I wish I had Fight on Death for this. You know what I'm saying? Now, as for this, this list, this army, do I have the Angelic Inheritors? Yes. So this one is Legacy of the Angel. So at the start of the first battle round, you select 2 legacy abilities from the list below, and until the end of the battle, these are active for the characters. So you choose 2 of these abilities. Able to fall back, shoot, and charge is 1. The other one is reroll hits of 1 and wound rolls of 1. You can reroll advances and charges. Is the other one. So all quite valuable. Into Orks, you're probably going to bring Wrath and the Appointed Hour. The interesting strat here is that in your command phase, you can pick 1 infantry unit from your army, select a non-character model from your unit in your unit, and then he has the unit character keyword. That means the units that aren't characters can now take advantage of the data sheet of the detachment ability. Pretty cool. Now, the Sanguinor himself is a little dork where he likes to jump in from reserve at the end of your charge. So you make a charge off, and then this dork drops in from space right next to you. Hey, Kool-Aid Man through the wall, and there he is, and he's engagement range. Some devastating wounds, some respectable combat. And what was the other thing? Yeah, I think I was looking, I was like shooting. Oh, mind you, he did actually have one of these Storm Speeder hammer strikes as well. This can actually use a strat to get sustain, and it does strip the benefit of cover from you. So if he's shooting at you, typically you don't think that's too valuable, but could be a little bit of, it's, you wouldn't think it's much, and typically we don't, but he brought it possibly for scoring, and just so his small arm's a little bit more effective. Quite heavy on characters. Not sure if this version of Blood Angels needs every single one of those characters. I think they do go quite character heavy, but the Librarians was also another interesting twist on there. Quite surprised about just the big point gap. So if someone understands this matchup that lay out more, maybe let me know. Or was this just a real kind of Russian? This guy just nails that detachment. Not really sure. Interesting. Yeah. Let me see. Was I missing? I think. Oh, and I had something else in the notes. And of course, we have Mephiston. First, fights first, low not, 4 feel no pain. Pretty annoying. If we, sometimes he can advance and charge. some people say he's overcosted. The fact that he's just a nice little dude with the 4-up feel no pain and a 2-up armor save and a nice little invuln. The fact that he's actually T5 is good for him. And the fact that you can actually choose to not be targeted in shooting, you can become a lone op with your character unit, means that you can start treating your character like that Gravis captain as like a big bully missile. Even though he would go with the Eradicators, the thing is, Eradicators typically don't do anything. So if you did choose, I don't know, think you did into Orks, but if you do choose the ability to fall back, shoot, and charge, it means you could shoot with your Eradicators, charge something, and then possibly fall back from it later. Or you just have it there because you want the reroll hits of 1 and the wound rolls of 1. Therefore, you have, but they already reroll hits, but for other units, for example. So nonetheless, off the wall meta out here in Russia with the Frost Hammer, and shout out to Ivan for overcoming them of those units, but also bringing his own off the wall meta list. But I love to see it. I love that he fully committed to the mid table. I'm gonna play stand toe to toe and bang with 20 Mandos, War Boss and a Snickra, then the War Boss and Mega Armor with Mega Knobs. He had some Tank Busters, a Battle Wagon, 3 trucks, Burner Boys, the Mega Mech, and then last but not least, Mork's Cunning, because being cunning is what we win about this weekend. Whoa, for Ivan and his cunning WAAAGH Taktiks Brigade wall. So, with that being said, guys, summary. Is WAAAGH Taktiks Brigade the only way to win 40K right now? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Dread Mob is still totally good. Warhorde is very good. We'll see if it becomes even better into any of the future in books that come out or codexes. We love Fight on Death. We love sustained volume of punches is always king. But the real thing that WAAAGH Taktiks brings to the table that really draws everyone's attention, a lot of player expression, as we've seen with the list we went over today, even that were slightly different, or over the last couple of weeks, of people bringing different versions of combined arms. Maybe they're dipping completely into orc shooting with a little bit of punching. Maybe it's a lot of punching and somewhat effective shooting, or it's just full on board presence, a lot of Mandos, infiltration, maybe some speed. Maybe down the weeks we'll see mounted. Not sure. Would love to see it. The point is that we have these options to even explore this, which is why Taktiks Brigade is being explored that way. Then on top of that, it also goes with the newest data sheet we got for killing vehicles, which is Tank Buster. It was not a new data sheet, well, new model, which is an old data sheet revised. Bear with me. Which the Tank Busters were that really missing key unit that we didn't have in our army whenever we went into the meta. You know, people would have their tough gun lines or the tough infantry, and they can stack them behind layers, and our wall is only a 1-turn thing. The wall changes made a huge difference for Orks as well. But people knew what we were doing and they could just kind of stand back and gun us down. Now we have the ability to reach out and deal with problematic enemy units at range, which means then they have to kind of stay and go toe-to-toe with us and bang it out with us and play the mid-table, actually fight for primary, and Orks can kind of put pressure in that way. They can clear screens now in ways they didn't have to. They have an advantage in the melee matchups with Warhorde. Having the ability to overwatch is crazy. And the fact that really we don't rely on one real stratagem in this detachment means that it's really about the orders and about the units and their data sheets, which is really always a good sign of a strong detachment. You're not relying on one data sheet to just carry you all the way. It's all of these data sheets have their time and utility. A lot of the time I might actually be using the general 40K strats like grenades and Overwatch. Therefore, it just shows how good that this is this detachment is at player expression. You have the redeploying, you have the full throttle damage builds. It's very, very intensive. So with that being said, we're going to come with more videos for this. We're working on upgrading. Don't worry about it. You get so stick around for that. And thank you for helping out and supporting the channel. Leave a like and subscribe. Share it to the Ork community because there's so many gets out there that still ain't got that cunning tactics. So show them what it's about, because there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall, because we'll not get T-Val. Whoa.